Russia continues to expand its operations and influence in Africa with ties in the Central African Republic, the Sahel region, North and Southern Africa. A recent report from the U.S. Department of State on Russia-Africa relations says Russia is actively spreading disinformation about the United States and European countries on the continent, while the Africa Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington says the outcomes from Russia's interventions in Africa will have far-reaching implications for governance, norms, and security on the continent. Now, for more insight, I'm joined by Joseph Siegle, Director of Research, Africa Center for Strategic Studies, National Defense University. Mr. Siegle, welcome again to Africa 54.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Now, what does Kremlin want in Africa?
Well, the Kremlin wants a number of things in a strategic sense. First, it wants to establish an enduring presence and influence along the Mediterranean and Red Sea, where it can interdict maritime movements and pose a threat to NATO. Secondly, Russia is trying to gain influence and present itself as a global power by showing that it can gain more influence and activity within Africa at the expense of the West. And Russia is trying to do this without actually investing in Africa. Rather, it is doing that by promoting large volumes of disinformation that are trying to create negative impressions about the West and positive impressions about Russia.
Right.
In the process, Russia is trying to undermine democracy on the continent. This is a means of Russia gaining more influence because it can cut deals with autocratic leaders without having to worry about the popular support. This also enhances Russia's view for a global order that would be more transactional, would have less emphasis on democracy, human rights, and accountability.
Now, we also note that even after Yevgeny Prigozhin's death, the Wagner Group is still operating in Africa. And we would like our viewers to hear what concerns you most about the activities of the Wagner Group on the continent.
Yes, well, the operations of the Wagner Group have officially been taken over by the Kremlin, and they're now rebranding it as the Africa Corps. But throughout its time in Africa since 2017, the Wagner Group has been associated with instability. Its focus is not on citizen protection, but it's really about regime protection. And by propping up specific regimes, namely in Central African Republic, in eastern Libya with warlord Khalifa Haftar, with the juntas in the Sahel, primarily Mali and Burkina Faso, and to a lesser extent Niger, and then with support to the RSF in Sudan, Russia is trying to carve out zones of influence where it can extract resources and have more sway on the continent, again, without doing so through traditional security agreements, without trade, without benefiting through investments. In the process, Wagner has been associated with human rights abuses in each of these places where it's been involved. It's annexed territory in each of these places. And so there's a real challenge to popular sovereignty as a result of the Wagner Group and now the AFRICORPS influence on the continent.
So what can Africa do, and what can the governments do to cushion the continent from being destabilized by Russia?
Well, there's several things that can be done. First, there should be reinforcement of the protocol against mercenary forces on the continent. All foreign forces that come in should be validated and subject to the rule of law and transparent agreements. Notably, the way Russia is gaining influence is often by co-opting authoritarian governments and the military juntas on the continent. And so a way to guard against this undue influence and this co-option that we're seeing is by promoting more democracy. Citizen groups, civil society, media, and regional bodies, the regional economic communities and the African Union need to uphold democratic norms. This then can allow more transparency for how these security arrangements are upheld. There can be investigations when there are human rights abuses. There can be open media sources that can report on their activities. Currently, all these things are being shut down so they can operate in an opaque environment that is enabling them to have more influence.